हर 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 महादेवा
हर 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 महादेवा
जय गुरु ओंकारा जय जय
सद्गुरु ओंकारा ओम।
Extra half an hour, 45 minutes to dry everything. We thought Vinod nahi hai kya? So we thought we would just shift in here for the day. I'm thinking though in the back, if you want to just stand on that couch and open the windows behind you, it might make it. Yeah, the windows right above you, they slide open. Yeah. Yeah. You want to come sit in front? Wonderful. Welcome to Satsang, and especially a very, very happy Dhanteras to everyone today. And it's so auspicious, this is so not the rainy season at all. At all. I mean, like unheard of to have rain early November. Usually we'll get a little bit of winter rain that tends to come kind of end of November, early December, when really the cold starts. Sometimes it's like mid-December and we'll get a couple of days of rain and oh my God, now you bundle up. But this time you can always pretty much assume no rain. October, November, no rain. And yet it's so beautiful because in Indian tradition, the rain is considered very, very auspicious. Like when it rains, it's lots of great blessings from the divine. And also on just a really practical note, with all of the firecrackers that everyone uses during Diwali time, despite a very severe Supreme Court injunction against it, nonetheless, that people keep using, it's actually really very kind and loving of the universe to give us some rain to just clean the atmosphere from the impact of the firecrackers. So thankfully we have this beautiful space inside that we can come to on short notice. So we'll start as always with one of our questions that's come in advance, and then open it up to any questions that any of you have. So this is a follow-up to a question we were talking about last night with regard to forgiveness and guilt and shame in relationships, and kind of how to deal if you're in relationship and there's been a rift. So this one says, what if you really love someone, but you cheated on them? You didn't mean to. You were drunk. And now you feel awful, and you are afraid they are going to leave you. So, first of all, it's really important to realize that just because in retrospect you feel badly about something, we can't then turn around and say, I didn't mean to do it. One of the things we all have, unless we are physically challenged in some way that earlier we would have called handicapped or disabled, other than those circumstances, we actually do have full control over our arms and our legs. We do actually have full control over our mouths, what we eat, what we drink, what we say. And so when, in retrospect, we say things like, I didn't mean to, or that wasn't me, really what we're saying is, that wasn't the me who I'm most proud of. That wasn't conscious me. That wasn't skillful me. That wasn't aware and mindful me. But it's really important to recognize that it was you, at least in your individual lowercase s self. And the reason that that's so important is if something happened through my subconscious, meaning I was not consciously mindful in that moment, it just happened, it means I have a tendency toward that. And whether it's a tendency toward anger and violence, maybe I picked up my hand and slapped someone or hit someone. Maybe it's a tendency toward lust, like this person, I cheated on someone. Maybe it's a tendency toward greed. I shoplifted or went out and unnecessarily spent a whole bunch of money on shopping therapy. In all of these cases, all that has happened is my subconscious patterns took control. My conscious, mindful, aware mind was not in charge, whether because I was distracted, whether because I was stressed out, whether because I was busy, whether because I was under the influence of something. But that which happened only because there was a subconscious programming to it. No matter how drunk you are, you wouldn't do something that you didn't have a subconscious pattern for. All that chemistry does, alcohol, drugs, all it does is it essentially removes inhibitions, it removes filters. But you wouldn't, for example, go out and have sex with an elephant, even if you could hold it still. Because on no level is there an interest or an attraction. So it's not like suddenly you woke up and found that you were having sex with an elephant. What it means is that most of the time you're able to keep those drives in check in that moment due to the disinhibited state from the alcohol. That which was happening in your subconscious programming just became action. And the reason that I mention this in such detail is really similar to what I said last night, which is the only way to even begin to try to make something like that better is a deep acknowledgement that there is a problem. A lot of times what happens is we feel embarrassed, not just guilty, but embarrassed. And we'd like to essentially just say, forget it, I didn't mean it, it wasn't me. It's okay, he can come in right here. Just come and sit down. It's okay. Just come. I didn't mean it, forget about it. The dilemma is, what's to say you're not going to do it again? And when we're looking at aspects of betrayal, of harm, the only way to know that you are unlikely to do it again is if you actually work to change the very patterns that made it happen in the first place. A, to make sure that you're never drunk again, if what that means is that you cannot be trusted. And B, to work on what are the underlying issues around lust that would drive you. Plenty of people drink alcohol and don't cheat on their spouses. I mean, there's nothing about alcohol that in and of itself, it sends you into the arms of someone who is not your spouse. There's gotta be something in you to make that happen. And so if you are afraid they aren't going to forgive you, the only chance you have is to really acknowledge that there is a problem somewhere and to show that you are really prepared to work to address that problem, to address an underlying habit, an underlying what we would call sanskara, an inclination toward lust or anger, greed, whatever it may be. But that would be the only way. Otherwise, people say, oh, that wasn't me. It wasn't me, I didn't mean it. And all that means is I'm not proud of it. Because you absolutely meant it in the moment. You were not unconscious. If you were in a coma, if you were unconscious, then you could say, yeah, I didn't mean it. But if you were conscious, you have full control over your arms, over your legs, over your mouth. We need to really start taking a lot more responsibility for ourselves. And I don't mean this in a way to make us feel guilty or shameful at all. It's actually the opposite. It's a personal empowerment lesson of, I'm not a victim. I'm not a slave. I'm not a slave to chemistry of alcohol or drugs. I'm not a slave to habits of thought or habits of behavior. I'm not a slave to what I experienced in my childhood. Just because my dad cheated on my mom doesn't mean I am destined to cheat on my wife. Just because my dad was an alcoholic doesn't mean I am destined to become one. We are not slaves. We're not victims of our genes, of our hereditary, of our chemistry. But this is where our meditative practices and our spiritual practices are really so important, because they change that subconscious programming we have. They change our actual neural networks, those sanskaras that we speak about. Most of the time you may be able to suppress it and repress it, but then you get yourself under the influence of something that removes your inhibitions, and that which you've been stuffing down suddenly comes out. It's why we see, I saw it with my mom when my mom had her stroke 2 years ago, and we see it with people with dementia a lot, where they used to be, polite people, or more polite. Suddenly, somebody starts having dementia, or they have some kind of brain injury, like my mom had a stroke. And in the 6 weeks after her stroke, she swore more than I used to joke with her that I heard more swear words from her mouth in an hour than I had heard in the 25 years beforehand. And while my mom had always been certainly outspoken and vocal, she was not someone who would just stand there and, cuss you out. She was polite. And yet, you see it a lot that people, she was upset. Obviously, she had just had a stroke. She was in pain. She couldn't see. She was confused. And so suddenly all the words that we know you're not supposed to use, they just come pouring out. And you see this a lot in patients with brain damage, patients with dementia, where suddenly all of the filters that make us, polite and nice and well-behaved normally, well, we lose those. And so suddenly, exactly what I think of you is exactly what I'm going to tell you in exactly whatever words might appear to my mind. And this is where working on those deep subconscious levels is so important. Because ultimately the goal of life is not just that we should learn how to properly suppress or repress or deny our lust or our anger or our greed, but that we should actually transcend them. So that no matter how much alcohol you gave someone, they still wouldn't do it because there wouldn't be the interest in doing it. There wouldn't be the drive to do it. They might slur their words, they might fall all over themselves and trip, they might throw up, but they wouldn't do something that they didn't have the drive to do. And that's why we work not just on our behavior, but we work actually on this subtle level of impressions upon the mind, impressions upon the intellect. When we leave these bodies, this is going a little bit more subtle and complex than the questioner had asked, but it's important and really, I find it very powerful to know. When we leave these physical bodies, we know that the soul stays in existence, that the soul is not bound by the body, and that the soul is therefore that which takes on another body and another incarnation until our full cycle of birth and death is complete and we attain moksha, freedom, liberation. But with the soul travels what we call the subtle body. And the subtle body is made up of man, buddhi, and ahankar. And that's our mind, our intellect, but not the content of it. So it's not, I learned algebra in this life, I won't have to learn it in my next life. Or I can speak fluent French in this life, great, I will, be able to speak it in my next life. But it's actually the way of thinking, the impressions upon my mind, my subconscious programming, how I think, what my tendencies are. That actually travels with us. And so eventually we've got to do this work. Don't think, it's God, it's awful in this life, but at least next life, I'll have another chance. We are carrying that subtle body with us into our next life. So the sadhana that we do to purify that subtle body, to purify, we also speak about it when we talk about the 5 sheaths, the koshas. In yoga, I won't go into all of that now, but we know we've got the different sheaths, the different bodies of the physical body and mental body and the pranic body, then mental, then intellectual, then causal, the bliss body. But again, it's the same thing. the bodies, the sheaths of the mind, of the intellect, of the vital body, the pranamaya kosha. Those three travel with us as the subtle body. So we've got to do that sadhana at some point. We've got to work through our lust, our greed, our anger, our egos at some point. So why not now? But don't just do it for someone else. Don't do it because your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your partner is going to be angry at you for cheating on them. Do it because you want to be free of the drive that would lead you to do such a hurtful thing in the first place. That would lead you to do something that you regret so much and feel so guilty about in the first place. So we do that work. Such that that subtle body, slowly, 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 it gets purified. And then ultimately it dissolves when we hit that state of liberation. So then you end up with much more than just a boyfriend or girlfriend or spouse who's not angry at you. Other questions? Any question that anyone here has? Yes. 2 over here.
When you talk about doing the sadhana, it's said that the self can only know itself by itself, through itself. So who is the one doing the sadhana?
Beautiful. So we get all not confused, but semantically confused when we speak about self, because there's many aspects of self. But there's 2 that I'll draw a distinction between for the sake of explanation. We have what I call the lowercase s self and the capital S self. So the capital S self is that which is one with the divine. The capital S self is the ocean, in the metaphor of waves on the ocean. As in, there is an infinite ocean. That is the metaphor for soul, spirit, divinity, infinity, consciousness. And then there's waves, which are the metaphor for each of our individual experiences, karmic packages, individual life. The capital S self is ocean, meaning even though it may be currently in the form of a wave, its highest truth is ocean. So our capital S self is soul, is spirit, is divinity, is consciousness. And these are different words that are used. They're not exactly synonymous, but for this discussion, they're synonymous enough. And they're all words that are used to describe that highest truth of who we are, which is not the body. That which is not born, that which does not die. That which is infinite and is immortal and is one with all and is perfect. That's the capital S self. The lowercase s self is the wave. In Sanskrit, we speak about Jivatma, which is this individual soul self, and Paramatma, the ultimate, supreme, divine, which is actually our truth. So sometimes yoga is spoken about as the union of Jivatma with Paramatma, the union of individual with supreme. Now, it's actually a reunion because we ultimately were never really separate. So it's more of a re-remembrance of the union that has never ceased to exist. But we speak about it as a union. So the lowercase s self is this individual body. my experiences, my history, my thoughts, my memories, my psyche, my subtle body, my mind, my intellect, my ego, plus all of the content, what I've learned, what I think, what I've experienced. The sadhana, the meditation, is done by the lowercase s self to experience the capital S self. Capital S self has no reason to do sadhana. What does the ocean need to do? It's the ocean. It can't do anything anyway. It just is. Isness. There's no verb that goes with isness other than just is. It doesn't do something. It just is. That which does is the lowercase s self. So my lowercase s self says, I really need to meditate. My lowercase s self sets the alarm. The alarm goes off in the morning. A more skillful aspect of my lowercase s self says, I'm going to get up. It seems ridiculously early. I'm in the middle of a beautiful dream. It's so cozy under the covers, but I'm going to get up. A slightly less skillful aspect of my lowercase s self says, tomorrow. And it hits the snooze button and goes back to sleep. Depending on which one acted first, let's say I get up and I sit to meditate. In my mind, I start chanting the mantra. Or I'm focusing on my breath, or I'm doing whatever my meditative practice is. That is lowercase s self. That is the mind. That's actually why, ironically, even though the mind cannot know the capital S self, and the mind in many ways is the greatest impediment to knowing that self, because the mind keeps telling us we are lowercase s self. Nonetheless, without the mind, we also cannot know the capital S self, because we need the mind to actually, as it becomes more refined and skillful, take us through practices and techniques and teachings that ask us, who am I? Who am I? Or that teach us mantras of, I am divine, aham brahmasmi, soham. Whatever that mantra may be, that is the mind chanting that. And that's why the game is not about killing the mind or annihilating the mind, but it's much more about refining the mind and taming the mind to actually be able to utilize it for me, to help me know my capital S self. So who's doing the sadhana? A very beautifully clear and skillful lowercase s self to know the capital S self. Mike Teinanko.
Would it be accurate to state that a little differently in saying that the sadhana is purifying the rajasic and tamasic tendencies so that the sattvic mind is more predominant, and it's the sattvic mind that is doing these, like you say, the skillful mind? Is that the same as the sattvic mind?
It's not exactly the same, but it's absolutely another way of thinking about it. Our mind becomes skillful and sattvic, absolutely. Without a sattvic mind, you can't actually progress very far in meditation because the mind is pulled so much into tamas and rajas. So either you fall asleep, or you're just totally dull and you have to kind of keep restarting because you keep forgetting what you're doing because you just zone out. Or the mind is all caught up in fiery passions and thoughts and anxiety and this and that. So absolutely, we need the mind to become sattvic. There's a lot of ways that we use to become more sattvic in the mind. Everything ranging from what we eat, to the schedule that we keep, to the company that we keep, to how we spend our day, to the yoga and meditation practices that we do. But absolutely, in order to progress farther, you absolutely need the mind to be sattvic. When I say skillful mind, I'm a few steps lower than sattvic. I'm not even actually requiring it to be fully sattvic yet. It just has to be skillful enough to override the part of the mind that wants to hit the snooze button. It doesn't have to be fully purified yet. That'll come eventually if you keep practicing. But don't worry if you're not there yet. Don't worry if you still have tamas or rajas. It's okay. You just need enough skill to actually get yourself up. You need enough skill to actually keep sitting there. You need enough skill to keep doing the practice, to know this is what I want to be doing, I need to be doing, and not to fall prey to the games of the unskillful mind that keep saying things like, this isn't going anywhere anyway, let's crawl back into bed. Or, oh, I wonder what so-and-so's posted on Instagram, let's have a look. Or, oh, I really should get to the office early before anyone gets in, then I'm going to get a good parking spot. Or, whatever it may be. But something to try to get you out of doing that practice. So yes, eventually the goal for the mind in order to progress is to become sattvic. But you don't want to hold that as your meter, because then a lot of people would already deem themselves disqualified from engaging in a spiritual practice. So you just need enough skill to be clear about your goal, about your discipline, and about the faith that you have from all of the sages and saints and rishis and gurus and yogis and masters who have said your mind is trainable. Just work with it. Like you work a muscle, just work your mind. Keep doing it and you will see it will work. So you just need kind of that bare minimum skill to be able to do what your higher mind knows is required for its path. Of course. Yes.
My question is when you say consciousness, what that it means? And I mean, what is the difference between the consciousness and the awareness?
Good.
Addition to this, how that consciousness helps in breaking the karmic packages, which you said. Is it like that? I'm just confirming it. Is it like that? If you are becoming conscious or aware, and you are looking at yours with the equanimity, you are looking at those patterns. So basically, what I feel that helps to change the habit pattern. So that habit patterns are only the karmic packages which we unlock.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, a very complex question. Karma, consciousness, awareness. This is, essentially, a semester-long course. But we'll try to summarize in a few minutes. So consciousness, one of the dilemmas that we face all the time when we're speaking in English about different Sanskrit terms is we use a lot of different words to define, a lot of different English words to define different Sanskrit words. We also use a lot of different words to speak about different aspects of essentially the same thing. consciousness can mean many different things. Number one, it can mean simply on a purely biomedical level. It can mean your ability to be aware that you are here. Conscious, unconscious. You're playing baseball, you get hit in the head with a baseball, you are unconscious. You wake up in the hospital, you have no idea what happened between the time that you left first base to run for second base and the time that you woke up in the hospital. You were unconscious, now you are conscious. You're not necessarily any more spiritually awake, it's just you are now biomedically awake. The part of your brain that knows I am here is now turned back on. So on the most basic neurological level, consciousness can simply be essentially every state other than coma, unconsciousness, deep sleep. Those are sort of the times in which we absolutely lose any sense of the self whatsoever. And all of the rest of the time we are conscious. That's the basic physical, biomedical, neurological level. When I speak about consciousness in the way that I was speaking about it, I use it frequently in a list of words because we have people who come from every different religious tradition, every different spiritual tradition, every different religious and spiritual background. And so when we speak about that which is infinite, that which is unbroken, that which pervades everything, the isness, we can use the word God. We can use the word divinity. We can use the word soul when we are speaking about Padam Atma, the supreme soul, that one soul, that ocean, that even though there are waves, there is no break in the infiniteness of the ocean. We can use the word spirit. We can use the word love. We can use the word truth when we mean that truth in a bigger way, an infinite way, that capital T truth. When we speak about Sat, Chit, Anand, so the Sat that we speak about in that ultimate truth. And we can use the word consciousness. So when I'm using the word consciousness there, I'm using it in not exactly nitty-gritty precise due to shortage of time and the varying backgrounds of the audience, but a close enough for the point of what we speak about. Word to mean that which flows through us all, that which just is, that which is unimpacted by, unchanged by anything in our physical body, anything in our physical experience, anything in this particular karmic package. Consciousness just is conscious. When we meditate and we get beyond the levels of I am thinking, and we get beyond the levels of I am meditating, and we get beyond the levels of that's an ant itching my knee, eventually we drop into a space of consciousness in which we've tapped into, and it's hard to describe verbally, but it's an experience of tapping into simply the presence of consciousness. You can think about it like a field like a quantum physics field, as in lots of things happen in the field, but the field itself is the field in which everything else is happening. That's another way to think about it, if you're a little bit more scientifically inclined. So when I speak about consciousness, I'm speaking about a pure consciousness, not an adjective to describe are you conscious or not, but a pure consciousness into which we tap, which flows through us, as us, is us. But we may go our entire lives never actually connecting with it. We may go our entire lives connecting only to the thinking mind, only to identification with the body. But hopefully through our spiritual practices, we have an experience of, oh, and consciousness just is. Now, within consciousness, to me, I am not Mrs. Webster, so I couldn't tell you that this is exactly what the dictionary would tell you. But to me, awareness is more specific than consciousness. So consciousness to me, again, is that pure consciousness of just the isness, the field in which all else happens. Consciousness just is conscious. It's that energy. And again, you can call it soul, you can call it spirit. It's that which brings life, in a sense, to the body, but doesn't die with the body. Through tapping into that consciousness, we can become aware on a very, very deep level. Then we can tap in on that deepest level of what you can think of as pure awareness, where it's me who's aware. So there's a me who is here. I am the one who is aware. But awareness doesn't change. So right now I'm aware of my finger moving. Now I'm aware of the feeling of the glass. Now I'm aware of the look on your face. But awareness hasn't changed at all. The object I'm aware of has changed. But the subject, which is awareness, has not. Awareness is just aware. And it can be as specific or as vast. I can be aware of the camera, or I can just be aware. In general. A lot of meditative practices are focused on training us to just be aware. And things arise in awareness. An itch, a pain, a thought, a sound. But we just return to that state of pure awareness in which all of these things are arising and I am aware of them. But I'm anchored in the aspect of being aware rather than in the object that I am aware of. But again, to me, and this is just on a very personal sort of how I think about it, when I think of pure consciousness, I think of something that is just kind of one step beyond, deeper than pure awareness. Because to me, awareness requires the me to be aware. Whereas consciousness doesn't actually require me. Consciousness just is. I want to tap into it, good for me. It just is. I'm here, I'm not here, consciousness is. Does that make sense? It was a very abbreviated version of really, really complex topics. Lastly, karma with this. So does consciousness choose our karmic package? No. Remember, consciousness just is. Consciousness is not doing an eeny, meeny, miny, mo, should I, where to be born, rich or poor, boy or girl. No. What's choosing our conscious package, or our karmic package, is actually our past karma. The actions we've done in the past, karma's action, have given us, you can think of it like a karmic bank account, and we've got a certain amount in the credit side and a certain amount in the debit side, and they don't cancel each other out. And so we need a life package that's going to give us the best opportunity to clear both sides. So I need to have the opportunity to have experiences to clear my positive side. That'll be the stuff that feels pleasurable while it's happening. And that's going to enable me to clear the debit side. The stuff that doesn't feel so pleasurable while it's happening. So my karmic package is created by the situations that are most conducive for me to clear those. And it is chosen, if you can think of chosen, by that package of soul and subtle body, man, mind, buddhi, intellect, ahankar, ego, based on what it needs to be purified, based on what the sanskaras in it are, what the impressions in it are. That's going to create my karmic package in each birth. But regardless of what my karmic package is, my opportunity, my calling, my dharma, to become aware of, using just these same arbitrary definitions, to become aware of consciousness. To merge into that state of pure consciousness. To recognize my oneness with the divine. Soul, spirit, divinity, love, truth, consciousness. To really recognize my oneness with that. That's all of our dharma, regardless of what karmic package we've come in with. But the different packages are based on which experiences are going to be conducive for each of us to have that awareness. Great. Any other questions? Yes.
Greetings. My question would be, I will try to formulate it. It's
Okay.
not a question that is
okay.
ready. Like that? No. Okay. So, I wonder if circumstances in life that we encounter that, for example, are challenging, right? Or are very pleasant, but like stronger experiences. Would you say that these challenging experiences, would they mean that, let's say, we are not doing that work to purify? Or are we? And it's kind of opportunity? And would it be a sign that this is opportunity and it's actually we're doing the work? And the fact that we're on the right path, it doesn't mean that it's going to be all roses at some point. Although my personal mind would love to get there. I don't know if it will ever happen, but that is what I'm wondering about.
Beautiful. So it's actually all of those. There's no equation that says challenge equals failure on your spiritual path, or challenge equals special opportunity on your spiritual path, or challenge equals. There's lots of different reasons why we have challenging situations. Some of them are exactly the situation that is the most conducive for you to walk your step closer to truth, your step closer to the divine. In that case, it's been essentially tailor-made for you based on your karmic package, that when you walk through that experience, fully aware, fully present, fully mindful, that you will come out of that experience having peeled back the layers of self that you needed to peel back for your highest growth. Absolutely. And there are some times where we have just won't learn. He just sits down and starts to cry. And his dad comes and says, "Sweetheart, what's happened?" And the boy says, "I cannot move this rock." And Dad says, "Well, why don't you use all of your resources?" And the boy says, "I've tried, and I used my hands and my legs, and I tried everything and nothing worked." The dad said, "Well, but I'm yours. All you had to do was ask me." And the dad bends down and picks up the rock and moves it right out of the sandbox. Because, of course, it's not too big for the dad to lift. And the story has a lot of meanings, but in this context, it's a way of understanding. You'd say, well, was having, a broken ankle a specific challenge that was given to this boy? Well, he ended up with a broken ankle because he hadn't yet learned how to ask for the help that he needed and kept trying to, kick a rock that was bigger than he was out of his sandbox. Sometimes we get challenges that we have to look at and wonder, is this because I'm beating my head in the wall? For some reason, is this because I am not learning a lesson? Sometimes we have this thing in our mind, I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, and despite everyone we know and love saying, for God's sakes, don't, we forge ahead, and it ends up horribly. But again, we can't take the lesson, and we just keep going and going, facing bigger and bigger challenge, that we wouldn't necessarily have faced. It's not that it was in our karmic package to face it. It was that we had this desire, or we had this illusion, or we had this vision, or whatever it was that was making us keep doing something that just kept throwing up more and more challenges. Only you will know when you face a challenge in your life, look at it and really ask yourself, is this here because of a series of patterns or decisions that I have just kept doing, that I'm unable or unwilling to see the truth? Or has this just sort of arisen spontaneously as a challenge that I really could not have foreseen, could not have done anything about? In which case, assume this is here to teach you or to give you rather, a beautiful opportunity to peel back layers of the self and blossom and unfold. And a lot of times challenges are given to us actually for later times. You know, when I think about my own life and I think about the challenges that I went through, especially in the early years of my life and the real difficult challenges, I don't think it was to teach me a lesson in those years. Because in those years it turned into just pain and trauma and, you know, all sorts of feelings that I later had to learn to work through. But in retrospect, I see it as such a blessing because I realize, oh, those challenges actually turned me into exactly the person I am, with exactly the ability that I have to relate to people who are going through difficulties. To be able to serve as kind of a bridge between this struggling aspect of humanity and the freedom of a spiritual experience. So you never actually know why the challenge is there, but when it arises, be thankful to it, because it's certainly there for your benefit. And whether it's just because it's part of your karmic package to take you closer to God, or whether it's there to make you finally sit up and pay attention and do something differently, or whether it doesn't actually have any benefit that's obvious in the present moment, but that actually is going to serve you in really powerful ways later on. You never know. You never know. And so you want to just keep facing them with openness and courage and clarity, even if you don't necessarily understand exactly what it's about. One thing is for sure, you're not being punished. The universe is not rewarding and punishing us. So never take a challenge as in, oh, I've done something bad. The universe is not a parent who's trying to, teach you something like that. If there's a challenge, it's to help you grow, it's to help you learn more, it's to help you blossom, or it's to shift your path. If suddenly you're driving in one direction and there's an enormous boulder on your road, well, the point of the boulder may be very simply to just get you to turn left here. So take them all as opportunities from the divine. Yeah. Have a beautiful rest of your evening, everyone. A very happy Dhanteras. And as we were talking about in the Arati, really just remember that the greatest wealth is real wellness. Physical health, but even more deeply that psychological, emotional, spiritual health and wellness. And be grateful for that and work for that, and recognize that no amount of cash wealth or gold wealth is worth anything compared to your physical health, compared to your spiritual health, compared to your emotional health, We try to buy physical health, we try to buy emotional health, we try to buy spiritual health to whatever way we can, whether it's through antidepressant medicines or anti-anxiety medicines. I'm going to somehow buy myself emotional health, or I'm going to take this vacation, this expensive vacation for my emotional health, or I'm going to, buy these pills for my physical health. But if we didn't forsake all of those things in the first place, in order to have physical cash money wealth, we actually would have much more natural and robust and powerful physical and emotional and spiritual health. So on this beautiful day, just remember that if the choice is ever cash or health and wellness, choose health and wellness. You can't buy it back later. So choose it now. And I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow, when hopefully we will be back out in our not wet garden. Have a beautiful